We begin with breaking news, new details right now on President Biden's announcement today that he will effectively shut down the southern border to asylum seekers coming into the U.S. illegally. That would happen if daily illegal crossings hit a certain threshold. Now, it's Biden's most aggressive crackdown yet on illegal immigration, an issue that has bedeviled his presidency. CNN's Priscilla Alvarez joins me now from the White House. Priscilla, I know you have all the details. Give us the top lines on this and the political implications.
Dana, this is certainly President Biden's most dramatic move on migration since he took office, and is intended to tackle head-on one of his biggest political vulnerabilities. We're now learning from senior administration officials that they anticipate invoking this authority and using it later today. So in effect, this is going to take effect pretty quickly. Now, what it does, it shuts off access to asylum for migrants who cross the border illegally when that daily threshold of 2,500 is met. We've been there. In fact, Homeland Security officials tell me that just yesterday they encountered over 3,500 migrants crossing illegally. This would be turned off when those numbers drop down to 1,500 a day. Now, unaccompanied migrant children are exempt from this. There are also some other exemptions for unique circumstances. And the idea here would be that these migrants would be turned back to Mexico or deported to their origin country. Now, senior administration officials acknowledge that they anticipate getting some lawsuits on this from either side of the political spectrum, Republicans or Democrats. They're prepared for that. But this is essentially taking a page from former President Donald Trump's playbook. In fact, in 2018, he tried to use this exact same authority to shut down the border. Now, when pressed about that, senior administration officials said this is totally different because they do have exceptions, because they do have a way for migrants to come to the United States legally. But there is no question here, Dana, that they are trying to preempt attacks from the former president before that first debate later this month, that they're also trying to blunt Republican attacks, which have been ongoing over the course of the president's administration. So this is, again, a significant move, particularly for a president who began his administration saying that he wanted to restore the asylum system. Dana?
Priscilla, thank you so much for all of your fantastic reporting on this. I want to bring in some more great reporters. CNN's MJ Lee, Estelle Herndon of the New York Times, Leanne Caldwell of the Washington Post. Thank you all for being here. MJ, you are also a White House correspondent for us. I know you've been doing some reporting as well. What is your sense from administration officials you're talking to, and maybe in this case campaign officials you're talking to, about how much they think this will help? We're going to talk about the policy in a minute, but just on the raw politics.
Well, they fully expect that they are going to be criticized, and I think the criticism has already been pouring in because we've been reporting on the anticipation of this news for a while. They expect that there are going to be legal challenges. They expect that they are going to be slammed by folks on the left, by immigration groups. And, there were senior administration officials that were briefing reporters earlier today on what to expect. And there was one thing that an official said that I thought was really interesting. They said, we expect that we are going to get challenged from everyone on the political spectrum, from the left and the right. And that is always what happens whenever we do anything on this issue. And by the way, that tells us that there's no lasting solution other than basically Congress acting on bipartisan immigration reform. And I think they happen to be basically right? This is an issue where no matter what the president does, he is going to get slammed. If he doesn't act, then he's weak. If he does take action like the one that he's doing today, he's labeled a traitor by the left, by immigration advocates.
Yeah, and sort of implied in what you just were reporting is the fact that there was a bipartisan Senate bill, and it was done with conservative Republicans, and it was at the behest of Donald Trump, killed and never saw the light of day. And that was the reason why senior administration officials at the time said that they couldn't, well, that was part of the reason why they said that they couldn't do what the president is doing today, because it needed to be done legislatively. Priscilla mentioned the fact that Donald Trump used an executive action to do some of this. It was rejected by the courts, and that was a big reason why Biden was reluctant to do it and wanted to do it through Congress, but Congress is perennially stuck.
Yeah, I mean, I think that some of this we should see as an acknowledgement from the Biden White House that some of their political arguments on immigration haven't held. When we look back to 2020, most of that Democratic field was mostly saying that what Republicans and Donald Trump was doing were bad, not really offering an affirmative vision. That hasn't really been able to hold for Democrats while in office. You've also seen after that Senate bipartisan compromise failed, the White House say, well, voters will blame Republicans and Donald Trump for nuking this deal. And we haven't seen that really bear out in data to the point where we do see the White House making this action. And I think it's right to point out before the debate to be able to give the president something to insulate himself from Republican attacks. The big tell is also that those down ballot Senate Democrats have been running away from Biden on this issue. They've been breaking and asking for a harsher border enforcement. And so that shows the kind of party's language on this issue has shifted. But to the point about the advocates, they've been upset for a while that they feel like the top levels of the party have ceded a little ground, a little more ground, a little more ground to the right-wing kind of activists on this issue, to the point where it is now the mainstream Democratic position to be enforcement first.
So that is definitely true when you talk about kind of the frontline Democrats. I mean, Tom Suozzi was in a special election on Long Island, Democrat. He won in large part because he was able to kind of flip the script on immigration. Not so for a lot of other Democrats, more progressive Democrats. Leanne, you talked to several of them ahead of this, and I'll just read some of them. Pramila Jayapal, Biden's executive order is very, very disappointing. Sylvia Garcia of Texas, I do not think that shutting the border, quote unquote, is a remedy. And then Hillary Scholten of Michigan, it's heart-wrenching to see. This is not going to come close to solving the problem. Before you weigh in on this, just to sort of put some meat on the bone of what I said at the beginning of the program, which is there's bipartisan backlash, listen to what some of the Republicans have said.
Whatever little short measure that he's going to do here is not going to solve the problem. In fact, by some estimates, it might make it worse.
Why didn't you do this in 2021? Why didn't you do this in 2022? Why didn't you do this in 2023? Why didn't you do this last month or the month before or the month before? How many dead bodies is enough?
The answer to that last question is what we were just talking about. They were trying to get Congress to do it, and they didn't.
Yeah, that's right. And so you see the split screen that's happening right now with Republicans. It's interesting because they say it wasn't Trump why we rejected the bipartisan bill. It's because Biden can do this on his own. So they tried to skirt the issue, and now they're saying, well, maybe this is not even going to be effective, in Mike Johnson's words. But this is something that is providing some angst on the left in the Democratic Party, because they think that the president is ignoring the base voters, the people that elected him, by doing these actions to appeal to the more independent voters that polling has shown is siding with Trump and Republicans on the border. But like we've talked about, this is nothing new. Donald Trump did over 450 executive orders when he was in office, again, because Congress, he partially blew up some of the congressional actions there too. Remember President Obama in 2015, leading into his campaign, he signed the DREAMer, the DACA executive order. That was an attempt to shore up his base. It's fascinating how the issue of immigration has shifted so much in the past 8 years.
Yeah, and 8 years and even the past 8 months, right? I mean, and on that note, President Biden did a lengthy interview with Time Magazine talking about what he would do in a second term, just as the former President Trump did with Time. And one of the things that they were talking about was whether or not President Biden overturning what Biden called Trump's inhumane border policies, whether or not that is what helped drive a record illegal border crossing, meaning he pulled the tough measures back, and whether that got people to say, oh, well, then I can come illegally into the United States. Here's some of that exchange. The question, were you wrong to lift any of those measures, meaning Trump measures, Biden? If I was wrong, it's because it took too long. You've put some back in place, the green card issue. It's been reported that you're looking at reinstating Remain in Mexico. Are you looking at reinstating? No.
I mean, it's a really tough sort of fine line for the president and this White House to walk, right? On the one hand, you know, this was a party that has consistently said, and particularly during the Trump years, everything that he is doing on immigration and at the border is inhumane and we don't support it. But at the same time, I think the fact that he is leaning on this 212F authority makes this really, really fraught, because he is...
Explain what that is.
This is the authority that was used repeatedly by the former president to do some of his,
Can.
and execute some of his hardline immigration policies. So the fact that Biden is using that same authority makes this really tricky. Now, I think the White House would certainly argue this is not the same because, for example, you have humanitarian exceptions that are in place. That's a reference to, people who are coming to the border with really, really dire circumstances. It might be a health issue. It might be that they really believe if they were sent back to their home country, they would be killed, they would be tortured. So I think that is the argument that they would make.